You know what? I think Alex Golesh did everything he needed to do today.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Auburn. I'm Zach Blackerby. He is the Montgomery radio legend, Daryl Dapprich. And I think Auburn did everything that they needed to do today. When you look at what Alex Golesh said in the electronic media room, what he said in the main media room that went out on the SEC Network and other places, as well as our individual conversations with some of Auburn's players, I think they did everything they needed to do. They needed to appear confident. They needed to all be unified in the message of what Alex Golesh is building. And Alex Golesh needed to just do what he does when he gets behind a microphone, talk a lot, be super detailed. And I think that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely. It is a major, to me, difference when he was in the electronic media room compared to the main room. I mean, I think he felt it was a little bit smaller setting. He was a little bit more
more typical. Right?
Yes, more. Yeah. He was more detailed. He was a little bit more, I think, exposed a little bit more. I loved what he had to say about pretty much every topic. And he comes across to me as somebody that is not surprised by a question. It's all about preparation. And I think that's what he expects his football team to be. In the electronic media room, he was very, very forthright about what it takes to win at this level and how he loves these players, how they enjoy being together. And he feels like that's going to obviously translate to the field. He talked a little bit about his offenses and what that means and how it's come along. Offensive line was a big thing. I think one of the things interesting was that he is very much focused on, Zach, you have to go out and piecemeal and patchwork this offensive line when you lose everybody, but that's not what he wants to do in the future. This offensive line class is very indicative of how he wants to handle that, and that is have guys stay in the system for 2 or 3 years, then start and know the system, know the terminology, and I think you're going to see that going forward.
Right. I thought that was a great question by you, and that's what we assumed, right, when you look at some of the guys they got late in the process last year, and then obviously this class, the 2027 class, loaded at offensive line. So it makes sense. And look, the guys they got in the portal last year, nice combination of guys who will start right away. Cole Best, Cole Skinner, the offensive tackles with Joe Simmons and Stanton Ramil. And then guys that got some eligibility left. Ramil has 2 years left of eligibility, but also like you look at them retaining Kel Ellis. You look at Derek Plaz, who may start and has a ton of eligibility left. You look at oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. The guy from Akron. I love him. Oh my gosh, it's going to drive me crazy. But they've done an incredible job of
McManus?
Yes, Kenneth McManus. Thank you. That was going to drive me crazy. I was about to stop the show and be like, I got to look this up. But he's done a nice combination of that right away and kind of backfilling classes, which is essentially what he did there. And then you've got an incredible freshman class coming in too. So to me, like this makes a ton of sense. And it lines up with that. And you can say that about pretty much any position. I think that's going to be his goal, but especially in the trenches, the teams that compete for championships, most of their starters come from high school.
Yeah, and it's getting in the system. First of all, he talked how big it is that you get 4 or 5 guys that do it together.
Sure.
They come in together, they grow close together, and then by the time they're ready to take that next level, they're doing it all together. And that makes total sense. That's continuity. Now, will you still have to go out and replace a piece here or there? Absolutely you will. But you hope the goal is you're replacing one guy or you're getting guys for depth rather than completely retooling the offensive line after losing everybody. That's not good for anybody. I think they did a great job with what they got. Mm-hmm. But in the future, you just want to add depth pieces or maybe one starter here or there.
Right. Yeah, so other things that we heard this week from Golesh and players, a lot of talk about togetherness. That's really important for what Golesh is preaching, and you can tell that it's important to the players because the players all said the same thing about it. Wanting to go, Byram came on the show and talked about, going to see movies together or going to fish in AG's backyard. I guess he's got a pond in his backyard, which is the mighty flex. Alex McPherson talking a lot about like just hanging out and like loving each other as a team. AG talked about that a ton at the main stage over and over and over again. That's an important aspect of what he's trying to build at Auburn.
I looked at the numbers. He had 70 returning players and 40 new players. Out of those 40, we know a large percentage of that was USF guys. The continuity, the closeness, the hanging out together, the familiarity, that's where getting a coach and a lot of players following him is a tremendous advantage. And I'm just going to say it. We didn't see that in the previous two regimes from a head coach that came to Auburn, whether it was Harsin or Hugh Freeze. Didn't have a lot of Boise players or a lot of Liberty players transfer. That gives you, I think, a leg up on meshing quicker and blending quicker. So we'll see how, it's all about proof of concept, how it plays out on the field. But I think it does put you a little bit ahead of the game a little bit.
Yeah. Golish spent a lot of time answering questions about his offense, whether it was different forms. You asked about tempo. Other people asked just about offensive football in general. And once again, like the intentionality of how to call plays. And he described it as, good offensive football is about matchups and finding space. And that's the thing. It's been a long time since Auburn has been able to consistently find space on offense. Now, easier said than done. But, I mean, how many times have we said this? Like, how can other people just get wide open and we have these 4- and 5-star receivers and they can't create any space? Because a lot of that has to do with scheme. Yes, you have to win individual matchups, but scheme does open up a lot of those things. And to me, that's really what this season, year one, is going to come down to. He talked a lot about expectations, Daryl, and expectations certainly matter. But people were trying to put him in a box and say, like, define a goal. What's the expectation? Define a goal. And he's like, I don't do goals. It's like a New Year's resolution. Like, we need to build a foundation. And it does sound like a massive part of that foundation will be what the offense looks like in 2026.
He's really big on the word identity. And he said he'd rather than set goals for what the wins and losses, his goal was to create an identity. And then the wins and losses will come. He talked about wanting to be obviously very, very physical, being very violent at the line of scrimmage, told the players that were coming to play offensive line at Auburn that was the goal. I think that when you talk about what's down the road and what he's looking like and what he's looking for in a football team, the space question that you brought up right now, not only did the receivers have trouble getting separation, how many times in different eras in the last 5 or 6 years did it seem like the running backs had no room in the backfield when they received the handoff? The Tank Bigsby's getting hit in the backfield, had to break 3 tackles just to get to the line of scrimmage.
When you face a loaded box, it's going to happen.
When you got inside the 5 or the 10 in a goal line offense, a goal line package, there seemed like there was no space. No space for receivers to run the fade, no space for a tight end to catch a ball on the goal line. Everybody else seemed to have it so easy, and it looked so hard for Auburn. And I hope that finally goes away and we see that.
Yeah. I thought the players said some interesting things. Byram, Champ, Alex. We'll jump into our thoughts on all that in just a moment right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Guys, it's here. It's here. The college football season is here. Coach Golish was saying today, 2 weeks from now, camp opens. Go ahead and check out all the futures and all the lines that are already up on FanDuel, all the win totals, because we're going to blink and it's going to be here. Make sure you're already in on the action over at FanDuel, FanDuel.com/lockedon, FanDuel.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON, FanDuel.com/lockedon to get in on the action today. Thank you so much for making Locked on Auburn your first listen every single day. Zach and Dap here with you from SEC Media Days. I'm impressed with Byron Brown. The way he handles himself, the kids call it aura. You can call it confidence. We used to call it swagger. Whatever you want to call it, that dude checks the boxes. Whatever you want physically in a quarterback, that guy checks the boxes. Yes, he has to go do it. Yes, his throwing motion's not perfect. Yes, there's questions about translating it from, the American to the SEC. Duh. All that's implied. But as far as everything that we can track right now, that dude is an SEC quarterback.
Yeah, he is. He is very impressive. I thought he would be. I know he's got the physical tools, and he doesn't seem overwhelmed by the moment. He's happy to be here. all the cliches. He's enjoying himself here at SEC Media Days.
He's very comfortable.
He's very comfortable.
Yes.
He doesn't look wide-eyed. The question I asked him was there a level of frustration at A-Day not being able to use his legs because that's such a big part of him and his DNA? And he said, well, I wouldn't say frustration so much. I think the other players and the other coaches know what I can do with my legs. I did want to show it a little bit, but he said there'll be plenty of time to do that when the season starts. He's staying very cool and calm and collected about the question because we all know that's a giant tool in his tool belt.
Right. He talked about that when Byram hopped on with us earlier in the day. If you want to hear that entire conversation with Byram, that's there. Or Champ Anthony had a big sit down with Mike and Ike over the War Report. So if you want a longer form of some of the Auburn content, go check both of those out. Would really appreciate it. But as far as how he handles like that specific thing, I think that does show a lot of maturity because I do think he knows that he's being questioned, like, oh, he's just whatever, oh, he's got a weird throwing motion. Oh, he's just a group of 6 quarterback. He knows what all those people are saying, and he knows that the stat line of A-Day, because it wasn't televised, is what everybody has to run with. And the fact that he's not being hasty about trying to prove them wrong, I think says an insane amount of emotional maturity. And that is important.
He knows who he is. He doesn't have any qualms about knowing his skill set and what he brings to the table. He's very comfortable in his own skin.
Yes.
He doesn't I think it's amazing that a kid that comes from USF to an SEC, traditional SEC school, doesn't feel the pressure or the need to prove himself. I think anything that he does is going to be self-motivation because he wants to win.
And that goes back to confidence and expectations. Like, he knows what the expectations are. I love the anecdote of Golish when Byram entered the portal, and he's like the 4 days before he got to Auburn when everybody in college football wanted him. And then when he popped up at Auburn, he's like, all right, what do I need to do to help Auburn win? I thought that was kind of a nice thing because people do just think he popped up at Auburn. But no, he got calls all over the place from everyone, was throwing lots of money. And yeah, Auburn ponied up, like he's taken care of as he should be. But goodness gracious, I loved that real moment from AG when he was like, yeah, those 4 days, they were long. I was a little nervous. I loved that. The human element of I think he trusts me. I think he wants to keep building with me, but I don't know until he's here. I thought that was a super raw moment.
I think it's incredible that there was even a question about that. I think that it was a foregone conclusion that when Golish accepted that job in the middle of the night, we all knew who was coming, but that there was a little bit of a delay shows you that obviously, as you said, other schools came for him. He trusts Golish, and he is very, very appreciative and feels like he made the right decision. Byram Brown does. He said it. He said, man, campus is just awesome. Being on campus and being around the Auburn family.
He loves it here.
He does. He truly enjoys it and is
here
kind of
Auburn, ironically, not Tampa.
Not Tampa.
Right.
And is absorbing that whole process and enjoying it. It's not a ball and chain or an anchor to him. I think he really embraces it.
Champ Anthony in the media scrum in the main room, I was standing over there for a while. He was asked about Byram's leadership, what stands out about Byram. And I'm not going to nail the quote exactly, but the main thing is he called him the most quarterback he's ever seen, which with Champ saying it totally matches, right? Because it's so energetic and genuine and just raw. And I think that's great. I mean, a lot of these guys, they haven't seen a quarterback like that. We talked about Jackson Arnold's fake confidence. And then I don't know. I can't speak enough about the Peyton Thorne stuff, but it's different. Regardless of what you think about Peyton Thorne, it's different. It's clearly different. So I think that's exciting. I'm trying to think of other stuff that Byram said that stood out to me. You went over there for a while. What else did you hear from him?
I feel like I went last year to the Diego Pavia press conference, and I'm telling you, the vibes were similar.
Okay, I like that.
He's less arrogant and cocky. I'm not gonna lie to you, but the enjoyment of being at a different school, an elevated school, a higher level school with more eyeballs on you. That's what and so if that's the kind of
it's almost
impact,
like I'm finally on a stage that I deserve to be
exactly. And when you do that, you flourish. Pavia did. We're hoping that that's what happens with Brown, but he gave me Diego Pavia vibes as far as the way he answered the questions, this confidence, again, less cockiness. I'm going to be very, very clear on that, but confidence and exuberance and gratefulness is what.
Pavia's time, like it really felt like we were going into his living room. And he's like, no, this is my house.
Yeah.
Like I own every room I'm in. I do get some of that. I do get some of that with Byram for sure. For sure. All right. Let's jump into more of what Champ said and what Alex said next, right here on Locked On Auburn. All right. Continuing on here on Digital Drive here in Tampa at SEC Media Days. Alex McPherson, I was wondering like what all kind of questions he would get outside of like his story and his recovery and his battle and then kicking. Like how much deeper can you really get with that? And he was asked a question about, why he likes Alex Golish so much and talked about how the first time they interacted, he called him in his office. We heard about these and talked and speculated about these one-on-one player meetings when he first got here. McPherson says his was an hour and a half long. He sat down in his office, and Golish, the first thing he said to him was, tell me your story. It's like, well, coach, it's kind of long. You want the full thing? He's like, I want every bit of it. And he sat there and listened, and then, Golish traded his story, and then ever since then, they've had this super tight relationship. And I do think when you hear players talk about the relationship they have with Golish, like it does seem to be a little bit deeper than other players talking about their coach. I don't know. I don't really know how to add more to that, but I do think that's worth noting, and I do think that's important.
It is important because they trust him. It's a trust factor.
And it lines up with the recruiting thing. It lines up with all the players coming with him from South Florida.
I think you have to feel like you play for somebody that you're placing your career and your college career in their hands.
Sure.
And I think you have to trust that they have your best interests at heart. Obviously, a coach's first responsibility, let's be honest, is the overall team's best interest. And if that means hurting feelings from somebody that's an individual, then it is what it is. But you can still do that in a way that collectively you say, I need you. If this team's going to be as good as it needs to be, like he said with Nimrod, Jeremiah Coger, I need you to grow up and be better, even though you're young. I need you to, and every morning he reminds him, we need you. So I think saying collectively, I want to do what's best with the team, but you're a part of that if you do what you're supposed to do. I like that. I like that avenue that he takes and that approach.
Yeah. A lot of the questions at Champ were similar as far as like battling back. What's that mindset like? And I think all those answers are pretty self-explanatory. He was asked like who the most impressive was. And he said Elijah Melendez physically. And he's like, you guys wouldn't believe we do all these speed tests. And you guys, if I told you, you wouldn't believe how fast he is. And he's pretty aware. He's like, I know y'all all saw that viral post of Elijah Melendez, like getting out of his shirt with his, or getting out of his car with his shirt off and is like looking absolutely jacked or whatever. But then he went in to talk on and on about how smart Elijah Melendez is. And, he got on campus and it usually takes guys a few years to figure out how to cover as a linebacker. He called Elijah Melendez a defensive back in a linebacker's body. And it's so like, I remember when he committed, Daryl, the show we did, we called him a thumper.
Mm-hmm.
We called him okay, this guy's just going to be a massive linebacker that can help you on early downs. And that is not what he is. He is a 3-down player. He can blitz, he can bend, he can cover, and he can create contact in the hole. Elijah Melendez hype was already pretty high. I think this week it went up a few ticks.
Think about it. He had a couple interceptions. I think he wanted to return for a touchdown. Did he not have a pick six?
Yeah, Mercer, right?
Yeah. So I think he has shown that he can do that in coverage.
Kentucky. We probably don't score at all against Kentucky.
Correct.
Get that pick, if I remember correctly.
Correct. Yeah. So, man, what a level he'll take if that speed, because we already know how he can hit you and absolutely, lay you out. But the fact that he's got some coverage ability and is that fast sideline to sideline, that's who we thought Riddick was.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, if Riddick comes on, there's just a lot to be excited about in that linebacking room.
No question. He was asked about Bryce Diaz. He talked about the bend that Bryce Diaz has, called him a beast, but he's like, you can't teach the bend that he has off the edge, because you can't just say like, yeah, do what Bryce Diaz does, because he's like, I don't know if anybody else can really do that. To just talk about that raw athleticism and him highlighting off the edge, I do kind of wonder what that does look like. Not schematically, but do you take certain guys off the field to play more linebackers this year? The answer to that might be yes, for sure. Seems like Cody Sigler is a guy that I haven't talked enough about. Not that he's not important. I just kind of I don't know. I just kind of forget about it. But Byram said he was like the guy that was in his grill the most when you go competing against his pass rush. And then Champ gave him some love as well. So Cody Sigler's name stuck out to me a few times today.
I'm going to tell you something. Interior defensive line with Dallas Walker and Sigler, if you're strong up the middle, just hold that down. Keep the edge, do whatever you need to do to make sure you don't get blown up between the gaps. Let your linebackers and let your defensive back eat. Just hold fort, basically. And I think that's going to be very big. Walker and Sigler are going to be very underrated. Key, they have to play well for Auburn's defense to play well.
Yeah, I think so. Because then you can just run it on them, and you can't use your linebackers the way that you really want to with all their strengths as far as sending them off the edge and things like that. So I agree with that for sure. Any other takeaways that are just like, we got to get out today from the things that we've heard over the last several hours?
No, I think you've covered it all. There wasn't anything, because when we talked about individual players and coaches and what they said, I think the overall takeaway from today, though, from Auburn Day is, again, overhearing and listening to other people talk about this team surprises me, that I think that they're expecting them to do better than maybe the national media perceives them to do.
Yeah, I actually think a lot of the conversations I've had this week have been kind of different from what the national conversation is. That's probably something we'll talk about either Thursday or Friday here on the show. So tomorrow, Daryl and I will break down what happened Monday night. We kind of wanted to devote everything today to Auburn Day here at Media Days. Tomorrow morning show is about Monday night stuff, where we had 30 minutes with Coach Golish, and he gave us a lot of really, really good stuff. A little bit more detailed, not just overall culture stuff, including calling Gavin Jenkins
an NFL corner.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, that'll drop tomorrow. Also, be sure to go check out my conversation with Byram earlier today. I also talked with John Cohen today. That'll drop later this week. We've got so much stuff. You're talking with Jordan Rogers tomorrow. Yep. That'll drop at some point this week. So we're going to spread it out. Make sure we kind of ride this into 2 weeks away from Auburn fall camp starting. We're here. Let's start acting like we're here, folks. Daryl, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
You've mentioned it, brother, right here with you, and all these shows are going to drop the rest of the week.
Yep. Please like the video. Please subscribe if you're tuned in on audio. Please subscribe and leave us a review there. Helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.